Hi, and welcome to another episode of Spinster Stories, where I will be spinning yarn and telling spooky stories. Today's story, we are going to be going over the Butch Bowyer case. It's about a man who was buried alive and dug himself out to go get help. Before we get into all the details of that story, I will show you what I am spinning today. We've got this beautiful pink and green and white Polwarth wool. That was a nice, fun springtime color to bring us into this new season of weather. So before we get into the details of the case, I'm going to be giving some background information on Butch. So he was really big family man. Loved his family, would do absolutely anything for them. He also owned a used car lot. He was known for carrying large sums of cash on him in the mornings on his way to work and then also on his way back home. So these two men, Jimmy Lee Brooks Jr., he was 22, and a Michael David Carruth, he was 43, they found out about that and decided they were going to, take his money. So they went to Butch's home where they had disguised themselves as police officers. And they didn't count on Butch's 12-year-old son Brett being home at the time, so they just, brought him into the plan too. So they handcuffed Butch and Brett and ended up taking them to a construction site kind of off in the middle of nowhere. After they had already, taken everything Butch had on him at the time, even down to the pennies in his pocket. So when they get to this construction site, they start interrogating Butch and Brett and find out that he also has a safe at his home. So they packed them back up in the car, took them back to their house where Michael searched the home and found this safe. He cracked the safe, ended up taking the $47,000 in cash that was in there, along with a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver. Then they took them both back to the construction site where they proceeded to take Butch, and they had a big knife and slashed his throat ear to ear. He was bleeding heavily, bleeding profusely. They thought that they had killed him. So they dumped him in a shallow grave that they had already dug. So they had been planning on killing him tonight. So they dumped him in the grave. It was only 18 inches deep, so not very deep, but deep enough that that would be a struggle to have to dig yourself out. So after they put Butch in this grave, they proceeded to take Brett and they shot him once in the head. And then they thought that that wasn't good enough, so they proceeded to shoot him another 2 times in the head. And then they took Brett's body and put him right on top of his father in that shallow grave. And then they buried him up and thought that they had cleaned up the crime scene good enough. They were due to be paving over it soon, so they thought that they were all good and clear, and they drove off. What they didn't count on was that they did not cut Butch deep enough to where they avoided all of his major arteries. So he was bleeding quite heavily, but not enough to die. So he, mustered up everything else he had in him to try and help him and his son get out of this situation. So he dug himself out of this shallow grave and walked a fourth of a mile, still bleeding heavily. So he was running on pure adrenaline at this point. Got himself all the way to a nearby highway where he was able to flag down a car who stopped and gave Butch his cell phone to call for help. Butch called the local police department, and luckily they had an officer stationed about 2 miles away. After the cops got there, they brought the paramedics. He brought an ambulance. but Butch refused to get any help, get in the ambulance until he was sure that they knew where his son was. So he led the cops and the paramedics to go get his son, quarter of a mile away, and they took Brett and they took Butch in the ambulance to the hospital. Butch received extensive surgery to repair all the damage. Brett was unfortunately pronounced dead upon arrival. After Butch got got patched up, he got with the police, gave them very detailed descriptions of the two men and of the car they were driving, and the police were able to track these men down, and they got them. And after their interrogations and in their trials, it was discovered that not only did they attack Butch and kill his son, they also had murdered two other people, a Thurman Ray Ratliff, age 68, and his wife, Catherine Combs Ratliff, age 62. Also, for a robbery, they wanted their money. These two people were found by their daughter in their home with multiple gunshot wounds, and 87,000 of their money was missing. So these men had stolen all their money and killed these two people. For all of their heinous crimes, these men, uh, Jimmy Lee Brooks Jr. and Michael David Korth, were sentenced to death. And, all this happened April 17th to 18th, early in the morning in 2002. And the murder of Thurman and Catherine had happened, I think it was a couple weeks prior to that. So, all in a relatively close time span. As of 2026, these two men are still waiting to be executed. They're still on death row. I'm pretty sure they are set to be executed this year. And that brings us to the end of our story. If you have any suggestions on anything else you would like me to cover, or if you have your own spooky stories, feel free to send them in. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Spinster Stories.